Hey, no one's talking about how ESPN just predicted Oklahoma State to make the college football playoff next year. Here's why they're right. This is the Locked On Big 12 Locked On Oklahoma State crossover.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to a Locked On Big 12 Locked On Oklahoma State crossover. Cody Stovall at All Day O State joining the show today to bring you all things O State. We will touch. Well, not physically. Drew Mestemaker, Eric Morris, Oklahoma State, and how ESPN has them in the college football playoff in 2026. And I don't think that's near as crazy as it may sound when it hits your ears. Then, Drew Mestemaker, Bear Bachmeier. We got some insane young quarterback talent in this conference. The number one quarterback in the country will be at Houston in a couple of months when he graduates high school, if he's not there already. But how do we lock those guys down? Because contracts, hello, Darian Mensah, mean nothing in college football. And we'll finish with the inverse of Oklahoma State. For Eric Morris's gain, there is what goes up must come down. It's coming down right now at Iowa State. The number one exodus in college football of players following their former head coach happened in Ames, a completely new look roster next year, and that is a bad thing. A bad thing for the Cyclones. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. Cody, ESPN just did the unthinkable. They propped up the Big 12, and they propped up Oklahoma State, 1-11 Oklahoma State, as a college football playoff team next season. Buy or sell, baby?
I'm actually very glad that you had me on to ask me this question, because I covered this yesterday, and I felt almost like a little bit of a Debbie Downer, a negative Nancy, if you will. Yeah. I think that the talent, just at the specialty positions, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, I think those alone should have Oklahoma State poised for a 7-ish win season. So the question is going to be, do we have the big body beast down low on the offensive and defensive side of the ball to do something more than what our skill positions can do? But thankfully, ESPN lays this thing out here. Kurt Cignetti in Indiana just proved that there are a lot of possibilities. Oklahoma State's not going to be alone in trying to replicate the Indiana model. Yeah. But I do think that Eric Morris, with the sustainability that he had at North Texas and retention of talent and getting those top guys to willingly come with him while bypassing a lot of SEC-style schools like LSU and Auburn along the way, I think that does prove the point that Oklahoma State is expected to be that good. I just don't know if we're going to have the hog mollies down low to make a real CFP kind of push.
Yeah, look, let's be reasonable about it. Playoff would be nuts. To go from one win to a playoff appearance would be insane. And I don't think Oklahoma State fans are asking for that. That is a completely otherworldly expectation to put on Eric Morris going into next season. So I'm not sure that anybody in Cowboy Nation is expecting that. The Pokes probably aren't going to the college football playoff. But Cody, if they do, it's on the back of what maybe the best quarterback in the country next season. Led the nation in passing yards this year. It's not hyperbolic. He could end up being the best quarterback in America next year. And he's wearing Oklahoma State across his chest. Is there the floor? Can you already say, hey, Eric Morris, you do need to win 6, 7, 8 games next year, or this will be a disappointment given the talent he's already brought in?
Whenever you're trying to back improvements with the dollar bill in this wonderful world that we live in, it reaches a point where you do have a level of expectation, right? Yeah. If Oklahoma State came into the season with a large number of returning players from this previous roster, and we were very limited on NIL funds, then I think you could reasonably say, okay, 5 wins would be great. 6 wins would be fantastic. Sure. 7 wins would be like a Super Bowl. But that's not what happened. What happened is we went out and spent $7.5 million on Mestemaker. We spent a pity penny on Wyatt Young to play wide receiver, Caleb Hawkins to play running back. We did invest enough that the expectations have to climb. So it does feel like when you're spending that kind of money and you have this amount of donor buy-in, you do have to have a return on investment. You and I both know this, Drake. Not every university needs an ROI to continuously have donors pumping money into this, right? I think that it's paramount for Eric Morris and Oklahoma State to have an 8-9-ish win kind of season for the donors to flood back in next season and continue this thing once again.
No doubt. Cody, as you look at the rest of the, I mean, if we're talking to BYU fans or Cincinnati fans, UCF fans are thinking, what? Why is the conversation about Oklahoma State? They were terrible last year. Why is this conversation not about Texas Tech or BYU or other teams at the top of the Big 12 that were at the top of the Big 12 last year? How do you convince them to buy in to what Eric Morris is doing? If they have no baseline for how Oklahoma State is going to be good next year and they're very confused, unconfuse them.
Well, again, recency bias definitely helps us in this situation. Going back to Indiana, everybody's going to try to compare themselves to what Indiana's trying to build. I think you're seeing a lot of that with John Summerall taking talent. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit more about Matt Campbell taking talent. It's not necessarily about how great of a coach you are anymore. It's what kind of system can you bring with you, right? How many players, how many staff members can you bring with you that equal a ready-made system? And that is exactly what Oklahoma State has brought in. And it's very reminiscent to what they did with JMU. Kurt Cignetti had a handful of guys that, you know, he just established relationships with at JMU for multiple years, and they hung with him. And instead of leaving when they had opportunities, they decided to, you know, even follow him to Indiana. And that's what happened with a lot of the North Texas talent. The guys that could have gone anywhere, they decided to stick with Eric Morris. And if we have an instantaneous return on investment, Oklahoma State very easily could be the next Indiana story. That's why it's so appealing. And when you acquire this amount of talent and you have this much continuity in the staff and in the GM, it has to raise your expectations. Does 12 wins in the American equal 12 wins in the Big 12? No, right? But does 12 wins in the American equal 9 wins in the Big 12? It's very, very possible, I think.
Yeah. And look, we haven't talked about it yet because I haven't asked you about it, but Oklahoma State has grabbed top tier talent from Missouri, Penn State, SMU, Louisville, Texas Tech, Illinois, LSU. Like, it's not just the people will look at this and say, oh, they're remaking a group of 5 roster, remaking the North Texas roster.
Yep.
But that is, yes, you start there. You start there because some of the biggest and best talents that Oklahoma State has added will come from North Texas, but do not overlook the other schools. Cody, I want to give us time to get into that young talent that is coming from Missouri or LSU or North Texas. How do you retain them when contracts are being broken? Hopefully the Big 12 can find a way to stand up for its schools. This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Oklahoma State crossover.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. The WNBA has released its 2026 schedule featuring a 44-game regular season beginning on Friday, May 8th. The league's historic 30th season includes expansion teams Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo, with opening weekend highlights such as Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever hosting Paige Beckers and the Dallas Wings, and a rematch of the 2025 finals between the Aces and the Mercury. In college hoops, South Carolina handed Vanderbilt its first loss of the season with a dominant 103-74 win. These moments are earned off the clock. Those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Cody Stovall, Locked On Oklahoma State, joining Locked On Big 12 today. Cody, my dog threw up in the middle of the first segment, just like all over the rug over here, like just everywhere. That's why I was muted for half of that while he was taking care of his throw up business. College football, the NCAA throwing up all over itself. Like this, it's just I'm looking at it right now. I can smell it. And that's how I feel about Damon Williams and Darian Mensah and Luke Farrelly from Clemson. How do we ensure that Drew Mestemaker at Oklahoma State, Bear Bachmeier at BYU, some of the best young talent in the Big 12, stays home in the Big 12 when seemingly contracts mean nothing?
Yeah, I think you have to have, again, instantaneous success. I talked about this a little bit on yesterday's episode.
Oh, whoa. That's incredible, by the way. People need to understand what you just said was free for them. They didn't have to pay for that. That success equates to players staying and keeping their contracts, not actually anything. There's no other way to keep them other than winning. Otherwise, you're going to lose them. Like you just said that, and it gave me chills. I want people to know Cody said that for free. Yes, he went to the school for kids who don't read and write so good.
That's right.
But man, he can do sports.
Yeah, dude, I think that if Curt Cignetti's, experimentation with all of the JMU transformation, if that would have taken 3, 4, 5 years, I don't think that it holds the same water as, again, the same conversation you're having in Stillwater, Oklahoma. If Eric Morris wins instantaneously, if you go from 1 win to 9 wins, well, then obviously you have something to sell, right? To not only your roster, but upcoming talent in the portal or a high school or whatever the case may be, that you can build for something the next year. What did Curt Cignetti do? Year 1, 11 wins. It's pretty easy to sell your guys like, hey, stick with the game plan. What I promised you was going to happen, it's starting to happen. Stick with the game plan. I think that is very comparable to what could happen in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And you're 100% accurate. A lot of these big-time talent guys that we brought in, 2-year, 3-year contracts. And the Darian Mensah thing proves that doesn't necessarily hold a lot of weight anymore. So I do think you have to have success. You have to win. You have to put your players in positions to do what? Get to the NFL, be successful at the next level. And I think, installation of different kind of systems and schemes can help not only develop these guys, but put them in the position to get drafted. And that is yet another selling point. So I think you got to win. I think you have to get a couple of these guys drafted. If you do that, then the blueprint has already been put together by Indiana. Thanks a ton.
Cody, I work at Westwood One Radio now, Westwood One Sports. When I signed a contract with Cumulus, the name of the parent company, there is a non-compete clause in there. And that clause says that if I quit or I get fired, there is a period of time where I cannot go to a direct competitor. Yep. That is common in contracts anywhere in sports and in media and in accounting. That's part of the game. It's what people do when they sign contracts. If you remember Joe Thomas, all-star offensive lineman Joe Thomas, like just nuts, dude. Played for the Browns for a while. If Joe Thomas in the middle of his Browns career was like, you know what? The Browns suck. I'm leaving today, and I'm going to go play for the Patriots because I want to. Cody, could he do that?
I mean, he could. He could. It would be pretty difficult, potentially.
It would be extremely difficult. He would have to sue anybody and everybody. Right. Like he could say, I'm going to do this. Could he actually do it? Could he execute it? Ooh, that'd be tough. But in college football, you can say, "Hey, I don't like playing for Cincinnati anymore. I'm going to go over there." Like, well, you signed a contract. I don't care. I'm going to go play over there. And instead of where Joe Thomas would have to sue the living life out of everybody who exists in college football, you can kind of just do that and say, "Hey, if you try to sue me, I'm going to sue you back, and I'm going to win, and I'm going to get the money." And it takes the power out of the hands of the colleges. Do you think there's a way? I mean, look, you're the everyman. You get it. Like you hard working, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. What do we have to do to get these kids to stay, even when wins and losses are out of the equation?
Unfortunately, I think you have to have negative ramifications that are very visible. Again, I think Duke let Mensah kind of get off of the hook. You mentioned it. Washington kind of gave all of these universities some hope. Right. If you are an individual that put together that 2-year contract for Drew Mestemaker and you see what Washington does and you know that Desmond has to come back, is it going to be slightly awkward? For sure. But it does kind of set a precedence. Okay, that if you try to come to the University of Washington, sign a contract and bounce, expect there to be some headbutting along the way. And we don't have a synonymous, standard anymore for anything in college football. And this once again proves that there's more instability all over the place without having some semblance, I think, of, you got to have a capping system, kind of like the NFL. I think you have to have a salary cap. I think you have an expectation on what individuals are supposed to make. And then if you exceed those expectations, you get rewarded. And additionally, Drake, I would like to see, you're seeing more and more backloaded deals. I would like to see a massive incentive on graduation, right? Like if your deal is worth $300,000 and then it goes up incrementally to say $800,000. But if you stay here for 4 years and graduate, that's an instantaneous $1 million no matter what happens. I think that could be something that somewhere, some university could gravitate towards, and it'd be massively beneficial for retention.
You think if we don't do that, if we don't find some sort of checks and balance, if we don't find some sort of structure to keep players in-house, that ultimately the Big 12 will become a breeding ground for SEC talent? A minor league of sorts for the haves, the millionaires to come and poach our best players?
I mean, I would love to toot the Big 12 is on their way to new heights train, but what conversation were we having at this time last year, Drake? All of the top quarterbacks in the Big 12 didn't leave the Big 12. They all decided to come back to the Big 12. We're not having that same conversation this go round. And I think that BYU getting excluded probably did hurt from a perception angle. Some of these guys were like, listen, if you don't win a Big 12 title, you're probably not going to get in. So now you're seeing that not a mass exodus, but the Sam Levitts of the world are gone. The Rocco Becks of the world are gone. The Josh Hoovers of the world are gone. So the same thing we were hooting and hollering about positively, we are now looking as a negative. And I think that somebody like Oklahoma State and a Drew Mestemaker can kind of put things back into perspective. So could K-State. If Avery Johnson has success, that's another thing that can kind of put something into perspective for retention, because right now the retention department and salesmanship is not great.
Look, it's a dour conversation that your favorite player could leave, but it's the truth. It's just kind of the way college football is structured right now. And I mean, as much as I've pinned this on the Big 12 and, you know, schools like Houston being behind in NIL than compared to Ohio State, there are Ohio State kids leaving. There are Alabama kids, LSU kids that say, I don't want to play here anymore. I'm going somewhere else, whether it's wins, losses, NIL contract. They're being poached across the country. And now guys like Sam Levitt are weighing the 3 or 4 different major options that they could go play for in college football, whether it be Kentucky or LSU or Ole Miss, and their landing spot. And what we're seeing across the board is for every success story, like Drew Mestemaker to Oklahoma State, there's the story of Brian Johnson, who wanted to transfer out of Alabama, and nobody really wanted Brian Johnson, and now he's playing at Division III, who knows state, and you're stuck. There are college football players who will not play another snap because they bet on themselves, took a chance, and got completely thwarted by the way the college football structure is, and that is, hey, if you get left off the table, we don't care. The NCAA doesn't care, and we'll do nothing about it, Cody.
You nailed that last part, buddy. That 4-letter entity that definitely, I used to joke about how they just throw darts at a dartboard to distribute, retribution for things that have been done the wrong way. Now I think they just flip a quarter, man. And there's no rhyme or reason. I think that, they're kind of butthurt, for lack of a better term, that they've lost so much control that they just said, fine, we'll let the crazies run the house, and we'll let it all burn down until the government or somebody else steps in to do something about it. And it puts universities in a precarious position. Talk about Clemson. Right? Dabo Swinney, he has the ability to call out tampering because he doesn't tamper, like most everybody else does. But at the same point in time, you don't see enough of that. You don't see enough of getting called on the carpet for things that we know are hurting the game. There's so many things that are hurting the game of football, college football, that we all grew up, loving, that I don't know, man. It's hard to look at it without being negative. Yeah. But I think Eric Morris and Oklahoma State are on the right track here.
I would love to buy a Drew Mestemaker jersey, but there is a non-zero chance that in 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, he's offered $10 million to go play at LSU. And, honestly, Cody, if I was offered $10 million, I'd probably also go play. I'd do a lot of things for $10 million. So I can't blame the kids here for the lack of structure from the NCAA. Coming up, Iowa State's feeling that right now. Rome is burning. Everything's falling. Jericho has collapsed in Ames. Is there any hope? This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Oklahoma State crossover. Hey, today's show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is exactly where I'm going right now, specifically to budget my money. Look, let's get real. Balancing your finances can be overwhelming. It's super overwhelming for me as somebody who's 25. Like, I'm in that young adult phase of like, what do I do with the money that I have? And I don't have a ton of it. And when I do, what do I do? I save it? Do I invest it? Rocket Money, that's where they come in. I was shocked when Rocket Money showed me that I was paying for 7 different TV subscriptions after college football season. 7. And I forgot about like 3 of them. So it's already saving me money. I canceled those through the Rocket Money app. I love how it tracks those subscriptions. No more hunting down customer service numbers. I can just cancel them right through Rocket Money. Automatic transaction categorization is a game changer. Can finally see exactly where my money is going each month. Let Rocket Money help you find your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/locked-on, rocketmoney.com/locked-on, rocketmoney.com/locked-on with Rocket Money. Cody Stovall of Locked On Oklahoma State. This is a weird conversation to have the Oklahoma State guy in on. Iowa State football in their mass exodus. They are number one, saw a graphic today, number one in players leaving to follow their head coach. So Matt Campbell has done a really good job of recruiting Iowa State guys to go play at Ames East in Happy Valley for Penn State. And the reason I have Cody in this conversation is because it's the exact opposite of what you're seeing with Oklahoma State. They are the beneficiary of Eric Morris leaving North Texas and bringing players with him. Iowa State's feeling the opposite end of this. Cody, for as good as it is in Stillwater right now, this same process is killing another Big 12 program in Iowa State.
Yeah, well, thankfully, our athletic director isn't coming out and publicly talking about how broke we are. That probably is beneficial when you're trying to retain your staff that you just brought in here. And I think that's realistically the biggest problem is Iowa State, ran into limitations. And instead of trying to work them out behind the scenes, he publicly kind of made it known that this is our cap. Yep. Right. So if I'm Matt Campbell and you're like, well, crap, if my AD is telling the entire country that this is it, then what are we still doing here? And that makes it easy to steal 27 players when all you got to say is like, guys, your own AD doesn't believe in you. He didn't believe in us. He didn't believe that we could do more or make more or earn more. So follow me to Penn State. And it worked. And you're right. Oklahoma State is the beneficiaries of the exact same thing from the North Texas angle. And I think that does accentuate, though, that there are still some coaches that have some loyalty, right? There's not a lot of it, but I think Drew Mestemaker sticking with Eric Morris may give us some hope that we can do some things that not everybody is doing, right? Because, yes, he got $7.5 million from Oklahoma State, but that was not his best offer. You know what I mean? So Drew Mestemaker did already turn down some coin to be a part of this. So did Caleb Hawkins, Wyatt Young. I think Anai White coming over from Penn State. Isaiah Chisholm coming over from UCLA with 173 tackles. There's a lot of production that had opportunities elsewhere, and they chose Oklahoma State because, let's be real, man, we have the facilities. We have 18 years of success. We have the geographical footprint when it comes to recruiting. We've gotten significantly better in in-state recruiting. We just have to be more of a national brand. But I don't think you're going to be able to get that in Iowa. We can dip down into Texas and get an exorbitant amount of talent. Iowa State doesn't have that, and now they're broke on top of it. Thankfully, these are problems we don't have to worry about at the moment.
There are going to be Iowa State fans that are frustrated with what Cody is saying, and I get it. Cody's delivery is just honest. He's being very transparent, but what he's saying is true. And it's not me or Cody hating on Iowa State or being mad at Iowa. Yeah, it's tough to win in Ames. It always has been. It's always going to be. And you know who said that before Cody and I said it? Their athletic director. Jamie Pollard has gone to the media, has gone to the podium and said, hey, we had plans for a wrestling facility. Pause. We have plans to revamp Hilton. Pause. Yeah. Because they can't keep up with the money. And it was the emotion of Pollard when Matt Campbell left. He said, hey, this guy built it. We're thankful for him. You can see the tears in his eyes. Those weren't tears necessarily of, man, I'm going to miss him completely and can't believe this happened. It was tears of, there's nothing else I can do. I don't have the budget. I don't have the money. He has been the guy at the podium in the Big 12 who continues to say, we are dying because we cannot figure out how to pay these massive amounts of money that the NCAA is requiring from revenue sharing to NIL to coaches' salaries. BYU, you can do that. Oklahoma State, you can do that.
I mean, dude, oil money goes brrr. I don't think corn money does the same thing.
No, they're not finding enough corn money in Ames right now. And for Iowa, they are a little bit bigger metro area, a little bit more, a little bit larger donor base, a little bit larger alumni base. For Iowa State, they are blue collar as it gets. And you could say the same for Oklahoma State in a lot of ways. They are as blue collar as you can find in Stillwater, Oklahoma. But Cody, I think we're, again, the haves and have-nots. At Oklahoma State, that alumni base, they're churning out dollar signs. Like that donor base is sophisticated. And I just don't know if Iowa State has that right now.
I mean, if they had the ability to get it, they would have gotten it after playing for Big 12 title just, a year and a half ago?
Yeah, they're second in 5 years, yeah.
So it sucks that Iowa State has these limitations. I'll tell you another reason that it sucks is for future. We don't know what conference realignment's ever going to do again, right?
Oh, yeah.
Is the Big 12 stable? Is the AC stable? Are there going to be teams that have to be dropped off? We were having this conversation somewhat jokingly on the squad show a year ago about how if Cincinnati and Houston don't get their shit together, they might not be in the next round of realignment in the Big 12. And then Houston goes and plays for a natty in basketball, kind of solves some of that. Cincinnati rebounds with a massive season. Now that conversation might need to be had about Iowa State if they cannot rebound. I hope they do, right? I'm a hardcore Big 8 dude. I'm an old school guy that loves the Big 8 feel. I want Iowa State to be massively successful, but it does feel like they've kind of bumped into more roadblocks than Houston at the moment.
Yeah. And again, this is a preliminary cautious conference. We're telling you have caution. We're not saying that Iowa State's going to fall off the map right now.
No.
But a lot of stuff's pointing to Iowa State struggling to the point of major question marks in 2026, given that there were 14 players on the roster 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they were trying to rebuild from scratch. Now, Jimmy Rogers could do the unthinkable. He could be the next Matt Campbell and win. And he brought in a lot of Washington State kids. And Washington State probably would have finished 5-7 in the Big 12. So I don't know if I'm that excited about the influx of Washington State kids, but there will be talent in Ames next year. Can that talent win the way they did under Matt Campbell? I don't think so. It has to be proven to me that they can. I don't see it yet. Cody, certainly our thoughts are with it. I one of my favorite fan bases in the Big 12 Conference.
Yeah.
This is how I felt about West Virginia around that time Neil Brown came in, of just thinking, man, it sucks that Dana Holgerson won a lot of games there, and kind of a Matt Campbell style. When he leaves, it all came tumbling down for a bit, and one of those fan bases that's easy to root for just couldn't figure it out for a while under Neil Brown. They got it wrong with their head coach. I hope it's not the same for Iowa State. We were rooting for them as, like you said, one of those Big 8 and original 8 Big 12 teams. Of the 16 that we have right now, Iowa State deserves those flowers as a fan base. It's already gone through a lot since the dawn of time.
Right.
Hopefully they figure it out again. Cody, what is the best way to support you, watch your content, see your shows? Because I know that as dour as the conversation is, you are super high on not just Oklahoma State, but the entire Big 12.
Yeah, it's pretty simplistic. Go see what I'm doing on X at Aldeo State. Obviously, check out the show everywhere you get your pods, all of that fun stuff. My wife would get mad at me if I didn't remind everybody out there that as my boy's getting ready to sign his national letter of intent, if he wouldn't have set up that GoFundMe during all of this craziness, life would have been extremely stressful. So thanks to all of y'all out here. Thanks to you, Drake, all the Locked On community. You guys have been absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, great to see Cody back. Great to see him hosting Locked On Oklahoma State as he is. You know, and those friends down in Norman, they got a kinky streak, Cody. Surely we'll have you on here the next few months to talk Oklahoma State, and how the Cowboys can overtake the Sooners in 2026. This fall. I think that will be the case this fall. Cody, thanks so much for joining again. This has been, and always will be, Locked On. Thank you all for making our shows your first listen every single day. A crossover with Oklahoma State and Dose Grande.